Hey, Originals listeners. So, I've got something I want to play you. If you are at all like me, the sound I just played is about as identifiable and evocative as pretty much any other 2 seconds of music I personally know. I could bathe in it, this particular sound. I want to play it one more time. That sound, of course, is the opening harmonica riff from the Sopranos theme song. And I got to tell you, it takes me to a very, very happy place. And I play it in celebration of today's guest, David Chase. Chase created The Sopranos and wrote, along with Lawrence Connor, The Many Saints of Newark, a Sopranos prequel which arrives in theaters and on HBO Max on October 1st. I have to tell you, I felt a ton of trepidation going to the screening of The Many Saints of Newark. The Sopranos was, and still remains, my favorite show of all time. It was undoubtedly great, and as everybody knows, it was the first example of what they now call prestige television. It's a term that's come to mean television with the production values, quality, and intelligence of the greatest independent film. So I have this strange, not altogether rational psychological attachment to the show. I think it's partly because it aired during what I now see as my salad days as a young journalist living in New York. And it also represents great memories of my courtship with my wife, Robin. Now, Robin actually devised an interpretive dance to the theme song, which she performed when we rewatched the entire series together. And I have to make one admission. During one questionable moment in the early aughts, Robin and I both wore matching Juicy Couture sweatsuits, just like Christopher and Adriana. So I thought to myself, Jesus, a prequel? They're bound to totally blow this, and it's naturally going to chip away at all those memories. Well, guess what? They didn't. The movie's absolutely great. I loved it, and I'm dying to tell you everything about it, but I'm going to restrain myself and only mention a couple of things. The movie begins in Newark in the 50s. It concerns the birth of a black gang that will go to war with the DeMeo crime family, which Tony Soprano will eventually end up heading, and it stars Alessandro Nivola, Leslie Odom Jr., Ray Liotta, Vera Farmiga, and Michael Gandolfini, who is James's son, playing the young Tony Soprano. And I need to tell you, you got to go see it in the theater. The day after the conversation you're about to hear, David Chase called me up and asked if I could mention that he wants everyone to see it in the theaters, and he said it very, very nicely, but as you'll hear, David Chase is not a man you really want to say no to. This is The Originals, and I'm your host, Andrew Goldman. I spent decades interviewing celebrities for magazines, the vast majority of whom shared very little of themselves. So I created The Originals to interview cultural figures who actually had something to say, wanted to share of themselves, had strong opinions. During his long career in television, David Chase became very well known for his strong opinions. And as you're about to hear, Chase, who is now 76, has not mellowed with age. Thank God. Welcome to the 5th episode of the season, produced in proud partnership with Los Angeles Magazine. David Chase, welcome to The Originals.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the film. I loved it. The cast was especially phenomenal, and Michael Gandolfini was great. And I have to tell you, when I first heard about the casting of Michael Gandolfini, I thought to myself, is this possibly going to be a little forced? Maybe it's a good idea, but maybe it's a little stunty. I mean, did you have any similar concerns?
I had hesitations about it on the level of gimmicky, yeah. I had no hesitation in any other sense.
And when did the idea come to you? Was this something that he approached you about?
Did he approach me?
Uh-huh.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we saw a bunch of guys that age. And it wasn't really going that well, although, I mean, that's the typical casting process.
Yeah.
It's not going well until that one person walks in and all of a sudden it's going great.
Yeah.
But during that period, I just thought, we ought to put Michael in it. It's got to be Michael. I mean, I knew Michael was an actor. I hadn't seen his work in Deuce, but I saw his work in a movie, the name of which I cannot remember, about a diamond heist or something. And he was on screen, he was a busboy. He was on screen for a total of like 17 seconds, but he was great. And it was really that 17 seconds, believe it or not, I guess it was, that made me convinced that it had to be him.
I was looking at the comments on I think it was a Deadline piece, And, that's where you go to find out, like, it's sort of the depth of humanity. And some person commented, "Oh, great. Last thing a Sopranos fan wants to watch is some social justice warrior treatise on black relations." So
This is a critic that said this?
What?
This
No,
is
no, this is some rando in comments who said, like, he was a professed Sopranos fan who said he didn't want, like, some treatise on race from the people that brought you The Sopranos. And it does treat race in a much more, in a sophisticated way. I mean, do you feel like when you and Lawrence Connor were writing the script, you were absorbing what was going on in the world right now?
Most likely, yeah, sure.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because, I mean,
But we were writing it before it really got serious. See, I'll get hammered for that. It was. Well, when did it suddenly get serious for you? It's been serious for,
Does that stuff? Are you afraid of being canceled? Is this something that, like?
No, I'm not. It's just that when I see really, really fucking arch stupidity, it upsets me.
What are you talking about, for example? Talking about, like,
that quote you just gave me.
Bad faith kind of.
Well, do you really think? Okay, you love The Sopranos.
Yeah.
Do you really think we're going to give you a lecture on race relations? If that's what you think, you don't understand The Sopranos.
Yeah.
You've been a fake fan all along.
Yeah.
And fuck you.
Yeah.
Really? I mean, is that what you really think we're going to do? We're going to do an after-school special?
To know the history of The Sopranos is sort of amazing, because I think Edie Falco said that after you shot the pilot, as everybody was leaving, you said, "Thanks so much for coming. Nobody's ever going to see this. It was nice knowing you." And then, I don't know, do you remember this?
That's not what I said. Here's what I said. I don't think I announced it to everybody. I think I was with her or a few other people, and I said, and I was asked a question about what's going to happen now, because a lot of those actors had never been on television before, so they didn't know what the procedure would be.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I think it's been a lot of fun, but they're not going to let us do it again. But I felt good. I hope you did. But most things don't get picked up, so.
Was this your natural pessimism, or is this what you learned after spending decades in television?
The two combined, but that's what I learned. I mean,
well, the impression, and I started off with The Sopranos, the impression that I got was that when you arrived to shoot this pilot of The Sopranos, you were pretty beaten down by the system. That you had been doing these development deals that were very lucrative, but ultimately didn't yield shows. And that this was something that you had lived with for years and years, and you were sick of it. I mean, is that...
Oh, I was definitely sick of it. I was fed up with the networks. I thought they were just a bunch of clowns. And I didn't really want to have a show on the network. The reason I took these development deals was so I could be paid while I wrote scripts to get into the movies.
Yeah.
And every time I got close to having a show on the air, I'd start to get, oh no. With The Sopranos, I was hoping that what would happen, that I could ask them for another $500,000 and I could make a movie out of it and go to Cannes.
Why do you laugh? It could have happened.
It could have.
Although, I don't know. Do they do that generally? Do they
No.
throw money at things that have already been filmed?
No, but they like that a lot. They like that show. If for some reason, I don't know what, if there was some reason why they thought they couldn't air it or something like that,
Yeah.
I kept thinking, well, or they decided against it in the end, I thought, well, maybe they'll come up with another $500,000 and we'll make a feature. And that's what I was thinking about. But instead, they picked it up.
David, I read your history, and the thing that's remarkable is how successful you were. I mean, you worked under Stephen J. Cannell, the famous Stephen J. Cannell. You worked on Rockford Files for him. You got an Emmy for a TV movie that you wrote. You had several Emmys, I think, going into it.
I had two.
2 Emmys.
Yeah, I had an Emmy for the Rockford Files, and I had an Emmy for Minnesota Strip.
Yeah. You had, by all accounts, a beautiful house in Santa Monica. You were taking care of your family. And it seemed like you had this extraordinarily great life, but you were, by the accounts of the people who knew you well, not a particularly happy person. And I wondered, a lot of it was because you weren't doing films.
That's correct.
Tell me about this. Why? I mean, was it because, did you have a chip on your shoulder about the medium of television?
A chip on my shoulder. No, I would not use that phrase, a chip on my shoulder. I thought that 98 to 100% of what was on TV was crap. I was very lucky. I worked with some really, really good people, not just Stephen J. Cannell. I worked with a guy named Paul Playden in the beginning, who taught me a lot. He was a great writer. I worked with Brandon Falsey. I worked on some of the best TV that was around, and that was fine. I mean, I knew that, and I appreciated that. But all of those shows could have been better if there hadn't been the kind of people who were sitting in the chairs in the network.
Did you develop a distaste for all executives, or is it just particular ones that you had to work with?
I went through, I was doing it a long time, and there was a long period where I would meet an executive, and I'd say, "Oh man, she really gets it. Oh, finally," or "He really gets it. Finally." You know what? That guy's not one of those other people. This guy has a brain, and talent, and a heart, and then sooner or later, the network executive came out.
They all eventually disappoint? Yeah. Do you take great delight in the falls of some of the executives who've said stupider things?
Of course.
Les Moonves famously saw the script of The Sopranos, and he was considering it for CBS. And he said, I like it, but can we take out the psychiatry, right?
He said, look, I don't mind the robbing and the killing and all that. But does he have to go to a psychiatrist? Yes.
Did you actually, were you able to actually have this conversation with him?
Yeah. Is he going to take Prozac? Really? Does he have to do that? Yes. And he said, well, okay. Well, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm. But when they're felled by like a sex scandal and they're sort of run out of town, Spears, is part of you like, finally?
Part of me goes, well, that's interesting. I mean, I think about my personal history, and now it's just interesting to me. Les could be a very funny guy, but he and I didn't get along. When he was head of, what was it, Lorimar TV? I had a deal over there, and one day, it was a TV development deal. And one day he said to me, did you say X Joe by, a guy whose name you'd know, not a writer, but you see that new series, the law series? I said, He said, why would you say that? What do you know about it? You didn't see it. So then he had
But why would you say that?
What?
Had you not seen the show?
I would not the least bit interested.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, it could have been it could have been Twin Peaks.
It wasn't going to be Twin Peaks.
All right.
I knew who the guy was. I knew it was a law show.
Okay.
You're not going to have a law show inside a courtroom. You're not going to have Twin Peaks. So then two public relations guys came up from Washington, and all the executive producers and potential executive producers on the lot were called to this meeting in which these guys explained what it was they were there for. And what they were there for was, can network television, can TV drama, can it help with the war on drugs?
This was during the Reagan era then. Was it?
I suppose so.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was spurned for, I don't know if it was born for that or whatever. And I didn't say a lot. And people were saying, well, if we did this, if we did that, and I don't know. And I guess they went around the table, and I said, well, I think the best thing that we could do to fight against kids using drugs is to not make drugs ourselves. Boring, stupid, irrelevant shows.
Oh.
One ripping off another. That's what we could do, is to make really great television. That would keep kids off drugs, maybe. And Les went, why don't you get out of the business, David? Get out!
So part of you had been hoping that perhaps The Sopranos would not get picked up and that you would be able to make a feature film. You know, you told at least one member of the cast that you didn't think it was going to get picked up. You had a lot of unproduced scripts. I think you had low expectations. And then the season comes out, gets picked up. You work on this thing pretty much in quiet. And then the whole season comes out, and all of a sudden it's this phenomenon. So that in 1999, after the finale of the first season, Stephen Holden in the New York Times writes, "The Sopranos sustains its hyper-realism with an eye and ear so perfectly attuned to geographic details and cultural and social nuances that it just may be the greatest work of American popular culture of the last quarter century." And I read that, and I was trying to put myself in your place, and I was thinking that I think I might actually soil myself both out of excitement and fear. That I have.
Can you read that? Or maybe you don't need to read it again. I don't think I ever read that. What could that be?
You must have. It was no.
I mean,
I get the sense that yours.
There was a lot of positive stuff,
but this was. I mean, for the New York Times to come out and say it just may be the greatest work of American popular culture of the last quarter century. You must have known that it was a critical and cultural hit.
Well, of course I did. I mean, when the pilot aired, there was only one negative review out of the entirety of America. And some other critic said, that guy is now in a barrel in Miami Bay at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
Of course I did. We all were like, holy shit, there's nothing bad here. It was all raves.
But I was out covering parties in the late 90s, and I just remember when this thing hit, going out, and I'd see a variety. These guys love to get out, the Sopranos cast. They love to go out to parties, like get free drinks, and it was like they had hit the jackpot.
In New York.
Everybody loved them. Yeah.
I mean, the cast would go to
the
parties.
Cast. And they looked ebullient to be, recognized.
Yeah.
I never got the feeling that you or James Gandolfini had this moment where you were bathing in this.
James, as far as I know, James Gandolfini never did have it. I certainly did.
You did?
Yeah.
What did it look like? Because you have a reputation as being, fairly serious and somewhat. You've talked about you're a little depressive and negative.
I oversold that completely. To the first piece of press I did was with the New York Times, Alex Witchell, and I oversold that depressive thing because the show was about a depressed guy and my mother and all that stuff, and so that's all people remember. My mother was pretty nuts, and they were a good family to write about.
And your dad was kind of, at least verbally abusive, right?
No, not for his generation. No.
Undermining or?
What? Yeah, undermining, confusing. Like I remember we were going to my youngest uncle's wedding. And so he was marrying, obviously, a younger woman. And I was probably, 8. And my father said, well, you're going to have to dance with the bride. And I said, I don't want to dance with the bride. So you have to dance with the bride. And he kept this up. And finally, I was crying.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to, you're 8 years old. I don't want to go dance with the bride. And you picture yourself in the middle of all these people. And he got really angry that I got so upset about that. Oh, for Christ's sake, I'm only kidding, What's so bad about dancing with the bride? Well, you're an 8-year-old boy. You just don't, that's overwhelming, possibly. For me, it was. Then maybe, let's say a year later, 6 months later, he was getting his hair cut in the cellar of one of my mother's cousin's house, who was a barber, Doc. And he had 2 daughters who were older than me. And I was laughing and playing with them. And he got furious and said I was an exhibitionist. So, I don't know.
Is it sort of like you can't win?
Yeah.
Can't win with this guy?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
David Chase's father, Henry, might not have won Father of the Year, but Norma Chase, David's mother, now she was the real prize. Even though the name might not sound like it, the Chases were Italian. Years before he was born, De Cesare was Americanized to Chase, and they lived in New Jersey, but they weren't crime syndicate types. First of all, they were Protestant, not Catholic, and Henry owned a hardware store, and Norma, if you can believe such a job ever existed, was a phone book copy editor. Now, Norma, of course, was the primary inspiration for the role of Livia Soprano. And really, all you need to know about Livia Soprano is this is a woman who okays a hit on her own son in the first season of The Sopranos. So, here's a representative scene between James Gandolfini and Nancy Marchand from the first season of The Sopranos.
As I can remember.
You listen to me now. Before you do any more serious damage to yourself or your grandchildren's inheritance, you're going to stop living alone right now.
I'm not going to that nursing home.
Green Grove is a retirement community, and it's more like a hotel at Captain Teeb's.
Who's he?
Captain owns luxury hotels or something. I don't know. That's not the point. The point is, I talked to Mrs. DiCaprio over there, and she says she's got a corner suite available with a woods view. It's available now, but it's going to go fast.
Of course it's available. Somebody died.
Oh, Ma, you got to stop. You got to stop with this black poison cloud all the time, because I can't take it anymore.
Oh, poor you.
You know, I got problems at work. I got problems at home. I got a friend who's been diagnosed with cancer. Most parents would be grateful if their yuppie children put as much thought into this as I did.
I'm not going to that place.
Then I will go to court and I will get a durable power of attorney over you and I will place you there.
And kill me now. Go on, go into the ham. And take the carving knife and stab me. Here, now, please. It would hurt me less than what you just said.
You know, I know seniors that are inspired.
Now, when David Chase first saw Nancy Marchand read for the part of Livia Soprano, he was floored by how much it was like his dead mother resurrected. You've probably already noticed some ambient street noise in this recording. Now, this is partly because the windows of Chase's Santa Monica office were open during the interview. And so at one point, I asked if I could close them, and Chase looked at me, he narrowed his eyes unhappily and shook his head, and I swear to God, I got this fleeting glimpse of Livia Soprano. It was, I have to say, uncanny. Which I guess should tell you that Nancy Marchand, who died in 2000, was indeed this kind of genius channeler or even necromancer. Needless to say, the window stayed shut. And you know, your mother, Norma was her name, correct?
Yeah, Norma.
She saw you win an Emmy for a television movie, right? She was alive. That was 1980. And you know, you've talked about how close she was to Livia. Do you remember how she treated your success? Did she bathe in it? Did she feel? No.
She sort of made out like she didn't know about it. Or maybe she didn't know about it. I don't know. But you have to remember, this is a woman who, when we finally had a child, used to refuse to show people her picture.
Your kid's picture.
Come on, Norma, your granddaughter, let's see a picture. She'd go to her sorority or canasta club. Nope. I'm not going to be bragging about all that stuff. I remember the first time I got a directing chance. I directed an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, the new one. And I told my mother that, and she said, well, did they accept it? Now, that's partly not knowing how it works. But also, that's the first thing you say?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Could you have written The Sopranos had she still been alive?
No, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have done it. I don't know. Maybe I could have, but I remember thinking at the time, I didn't think about it, but I remember thinking at the time when it became famous that, it's a good thing she's passed away. I remember my wife told me that she was on the set one time, and she went past Nancy Marchand's trailer, and they were talking. And Nancy said, I trust this creature that I'm playing is deceased.
You know, obviously Livia is homicidal. Did you feel, I mean, this is taking it to an extreme. You don't feel like your mother wanted you dead, obviously, but do you feel like your mother wished did not wish well for you, or success, or happiness.
She wanted me to succeed in a way that would bring acceptance and glory to her
Yeah.
and to my father.
Yeah.
In other words, school teacher, a minister, something like that. She would have understood and liked. This whole show business thing and stardom, that was completely, she just didn't get it.
Presumably, you got to throw her a nice car or something, or a nice apartment. I mean, you were making a lot of money when she passed away, or no, maybe you didn't. Maybe you retaliated by not giving her a damn thing.
No, it wasn't retaliation. She had a car.
Uh-huh.
And she had a nice apartment.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't think of what else she needed.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't have accepted it.
She wouldn't have.
Oh, she would have been yelling at me, screaming at me. I had an uncle, my Uncle Dave, used to pick her up in New Jersey and drive her to Westchester County so she could visit my Aunt Emma, who was his sister, because my mother would never drive that far. And finally, after, I don't know, a year's worth of these round trips from Westchester to New Jersey, she offered him $50. And he took it. And she was just outraged. Outraged. Called me and said, you know, Uncle David, can you believe he took that money? Yeah. I don't know.
She had a long memory, but it sounds. Do you have a long memory for slights and stuff? I mean,
Yeah.
do you feel like? How are you like your mother?
Well, I'm talking to you now about my problems with the networks, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, but she had a good sense of humor.
My mother?
This is what I've read. No, she did not have a good sense of humor, or she was just funny, perhaps unintentionally funny.
I would say she didn't think much was. I mean, she was very anxious all the time, and negative, and really filled with bile. And but you could make her laugh. And I've sometimes wondered that she was so nutty that she must have been doing some of it either for attention or to make us laugh. I mean, it's another one. I remember being there with my daughter and my wife and my wife's parents in this seafood restaurant in New Jersey, waiting for a table. And we were next to, they had one of those built-in aquariums in the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, I guess, lobsters in there and clams. And we're just staying there. My mother's looking at it and she goes, there's another thing I hate. Out of the blue. And then she kind of laughed.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say.
Oh, one thing
nobody else was talking. There's another thing I hate.
There's another
thing. Yeah.
Do you think like her internal monologue was just sort of it was like an inventory of everything she hated?
My cousin John said to me, her fears and her dislikes are all that's in her mind. Everything else is on the periphery.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably true.
I can identify that sometimes. Did you experience a grief when she died?
No.
No?
No.
When I was reading about the production of the show, I know that Nancy Marchand, who was sick pretty much from the beginning of production, expressed to you that she'd prefer that you not kill her, that you not let her character die when might have been perhaps a more natural time to die. And you said, and you agreed. And to me, just reading about you, it didn't seem like the kind of decision you would have made for everybody. And I wondered if there was any part of you, because she reminded you so much of her mother. No?
No. I just thought she was fantastic. I loved Nancy. If any of those cast people had said, please don't kill me, I would have said, okay.
Really? I wondered about that because you had power. I mean, there were people. I sort of had to imagine that, not unlike Tony, people would have been begging for their lives or livelihoods. So when you kill Pussy off, he doesn't get his pages and he doesn't come in and say, is there any way we can avoid me dying?
No.
No.
I mean, maybe he said it once. Nobody begged. No, nobody did that.
I have to say, I was a little concerned coming over after having consumed everything because you come off to some people as a scary character. I read years ago a story where they found the criminal record of Tony Sirico, and it was a little scary, like the things that he had done in the day.
Yeah.
And there's a quote from Tony that I want to read you, and he said, "I've met a lot of tough guys in my life, but when I see David, I step back."
Well,
Why do you scare? What is it about you?
I don't know.
Do you understand this? Have people told you this before?
Well, in high school, girls said about me, he seems like a criminal. Well, he's so sour. I was extremely shy. Had a very low self-esteem when it came to girls because I wasn't playing sports. My Aunt Mary, all my aunts told me that when I was little, I was never smiling, even before I could talk. I remember my Aunt Mary saying, "You could stand on your head to make him laugh," and he wouldn't do it. It wasn't that I wouldn't do it, I just didn't. I don't know.
I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm looking at you, and I'm thinking, if I saw pictures of you in the paper, if all the pictures of who's the guy that died in prison who was on the lam from Boston?
Whitey Bulger?
Yeah. That if I was told that you were Whitey Bulger and I walked into a room, I'd be like, yeah, that's totally White. That is White. Not that you look like Whitey Bulger, but you look like you could be a scary, scary character. I hope that you don't take that as an insult. It's a power that many people would love to have.
Well, I've discovered that it's done me well
How?
in this business, but I didn't know it for a long time. And then I began to hear it, that I was, people were afraid to go up against me. I mean, I guess I was always willing to say what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's my mother. She always said what she was thinking, as horrible as it was, and it's ludicrous, but I didn't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
The thing was that I got a reputation for being difficult. I will tell you, I am somebody who, until this year, never screamed at anyone over the phone in this business or in person. Never.
Well, that's
Hardly ever
the
raised
power position.
What?
If you're very quiet and you say something.
I guess so.
So James Gandolfini didn't enjoy. It's super ironic to me. I mean, I just don't really understand the kind of character who could have all the trappings of Tony Soprano, the best cigars, the best liquor, the best women, have no worries about going to prison. He could have lived this. Then you would see him in the tabloids, like shooing away paparazzi, and he looked miserable. And I just thought to myself, God, couldn't this guy have enjoyed this? Wouldn't this have been like a never-ending party?
Well, I think he partied quite a bit. But in the end, I don't think he enjoyed it. I believe that he had a problem with authority figures, because I was one of them. No, I mean, I had conversations with him, intimate conversations, and he was not happy. I don't say he was not happy all the time. He said he was not interested in this role, or he blamed it on the role. That playing Tony Soprano is what makes me an asshole.
You've said that he brought the menace, though. There was a line.
Absolutely. Well, he's a big guy,
Yeah.
number one, but he brought the menace. Yeah.
That scene you've referenced it, the scene in the pilot where
He lifts Michael off the ground with his.
Michael Imperioli says, "Oh, maybe I'll write a script," and it was supposed to be a love tap, right? He kind of like
That's
sort of,
what it says in the script. I love that.
and he looks like he's going to throttle him.
He did throttle him. I think he lifted him off the ground by his shirt. He was not like that at all in his daily life. I mean, I don't know what he was like in high school. Apparently, he was a very popular, happy basketball player. I think in college he was a hard-drinking, happy, wild man frat boy, from what I can tell. And he could be a lot of fun. You could have a lot of fun with Jim. But there was something sad there.
Do you think did it only come out when he became Tony? Because
No. And if you talk to the rest of the cast or the rest of the people involved with the show, they will say he's the greatest guy on earth. And to them, he probably was. I don't have that response.
You I think that you've both said that you had some things in common, that when you got angry, people would give you a few minutes to break some shit. Like he liked to break stuff, and you like to, I don't know, occasionally break things.
Right.
I mean, do you feel alike? Did you feel a kinship in that way?
Well, at his funeral, I said I felt like his brother. His brothers don't always get along. And we did have, there is something that we understood that I can't even name or think of what it is, that we understood about where we were in the universe that we both got. And I don't know that anybody else got it.
I've been thinking about this debate, because The Sopranos has been called like the best writing in American television ever. And, the story is that initially you wanted to cast Steven Van Zandt possibly as Tony, and then there was some talk of maybe Michael Rispoli, who played Jackie Abril in the first season. And then there was Anthony LaPaglia. And I've wondered, how much credit do we have to give Gandolfini? Do you think that this would have been the phenomenon had he not embodied this role?
No, I do not. Something was going on there. Something was going on in the universe. I'm not talking about our great talent or anything else. There was a whole period of time. Well, Brad Gray said to me, like in the second or third season, he said to me, this is never going to happen again. This is it. So make what you can out of it. Because this is not, he said, the expression lightning in a bottle? Well, that lightning doesn't go in a bottle. And this is never going to happen again. And I took that seriously. But there was a period of time where we simply couldn't take a step wrong. I mean, you can say, well, that episode sucked, or I don't know, that Christopher Columbus. But by and large, it all came out. I mean, the scripts came out really good. And the shows came out really good, despite many things that were against it. And not only that, but things would happen. Things would happen in the show. I can't cite one. We'd use a word on the show or whatever it was. And a month or two later, it would happen in the world. I swear.
Did it end when it should have ended? The one thing I'm not going to ask you is about, I've read various accounts where I hear Tony's dead, Tony's alive. You've said things that people have interpreted both ways. And you have gotten angry when people have asked you about it. I'm not going to ask you whether Tony's alive or dead, because it seems to why does it bother you so much that people have been talking about it for so many years? What is it?
Well, it doesn't really bother me now. I mean, at that time, it bothered me that people were so offended by it. That's what got me. Not that they didn't like it. They were offended.
Oh, my God. I'd forgotten. I mean, I don't know if you want to read some of the stuff, but I was...
Oh, yeah.
I was shocked by the reaction by some of the critics. Linda Stacy basically described, and this is somebody that you had some history with. She had tried out for the show, and then she was the one who I think had written famously in the New York Post that you weren't killing enough people on the show for her taste, right? More, what was it? Less yakking, more whacking? Is that the phrase that you came up?
That was the phrase. I don't know if that was her phrase.
But everybody felt like they had some sort of, at a certain point, an ownership over it.
Yes. I think that happens with very popular shows, not just our show.
After Linda Stacy wrote that column, you actually wrote a character and had an actress cast who looked quite a bit like her and had her whacked, right?
She wishes she looked like that. Yeah, Patty Darvinville. Yep.
So you obviously, I mean, it must have irked you when you read this stuff. I mean, you were not...
It irked me because that stuff came out after she didn't get the role.
And you think it was related?
Sure.
Oh, I found the critiques. Do you want to hear them? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
I found it telling how invested people were after the finale.
Well, so did I. I couldn't, I was in France, and people said he ran away to France. I had been in France for 2 months before that. That's where I had a house. We used to go there every year.
But I think it speaks to how much people loved the show and how much they felt like they were part of it. Linda Stacy wrote, I had to laugh when I read this morning. Chase will have to live with what he did last night.
Oh, God.
Nikki Fink wrote, you ready for this? Chase clearly didn't give a damn about his fans. Instead, he crapped in their faces. This is why America hates Hollywood. And I guess, and it
well, you know what? Everybody hates Nikki Fink. Probably all her life, people have hated Nikki Fink. So I would crap in her face, but not the audience.
So were you taken aback by the emotion that people expressed?
Was I taken aback? I was amazed. I was laughing like we are now.
Were you? Because it would kill. I would
shit.
want to take a golf club and beat a car.
It was both of them. The Linda Stacy thing. I mean, come on. Chase will have to live with what he did last week. And you think to yourself, you're stupid for thinking this way. Yeah, there's a war going on. And people are being killed and having their legs blown off and their arms and everything like that. And I have to live with myself because does the show cut to black? What are you talking about? Do you have any perspective on this place we are, on this planet?
In 2012, 5 years after The Sopranos ended, Chase released his first feature film. It was called Not Fade Away, and it was a semi-autobiographical film about high school kids in New Jersey in the early 60s, playing in a rock band that idolizes and emulates the Stones and the Beatles. So Chase, just like the movie's protagonist, Douglas Damiano, played drums in a band, and the film was a reunion of sorts since James Gandolfini played Douglas's father. Critics mostly liked the movie, but it never really found its audience. Then, the next year, Gandolfini would die of a heart attack in Rome after a day of sightseeing out in the heat. It was his son Michael, who was then 14, who discovered the body in the hotel room. So, The Many Saints of Newark is in many ways a comeback for Chase, as well as a tribute to and a reminder of what he and Gandolfini made together. A couple weeks ago, Bob Odenkirk collapsed on the set of Better Call Saul. And I can't tell you, the fear that I had to find out news. I don't know this guy. I interviewed him once for 20 minutes. He's a perfectly nice guy, but I love Saul. And the idea that he was possibly going to die just killed me. And then I remembered it brought back when Gandolfini died. And the feeling that I had, I hate to admit this, my father died recently. I didn't have the same kind of feelings when my dad died. I had this intense grief. I don't think that people who were involved in The Sopranos, I don't think it was a great surprise. I think Terrence Winter had said during The Sopranos, he thought that, he heard something come on the radio and say, sad news coming out of Hollywood. And he said, oh my God, Jim's dead.
Yeah.
And, he was partying. He had, I think, coke problems. He wasn't showing up. So I don't know if by that point he'd gotten himself together, but I don't know if you weren't surprised. Did you have a similar reaction?
I was not surprised.
You were not surprised?
No.
Were you destroyed?
No.
No.
He and I were sick of each other by that time. And then, but actually we weren't, because we got on to make a movie together.
See, this is what I wanted to ask you about, because you've talked about how difficult he was, that it was a huge pain in the ass to work with, and then your first feature film, Not Fade Away, you guys come back together. It's like, is this like an abusive relationship or something? Is this some codependence?
No, I don't think so. No, it's not an abusive. From my point, no, it's not an abusive relationship. That was so strange. We were looking for somebody to play that role, and maybe the casting director had asked him, and he said, "Oh no," blah, blah, blah. And for some reason, I was on the phone with him. I suspect it had something to do with Sopranos business, even though it was off the air. So he said, "How you coming on your movie?" I said, well, I think we're doing all right. But it's this casting thing has been hard. But I think we're okay. So he said, well, yeah, who are you going to put in it? And I said, and he said, oh, Jesus.
You said who?
I said who I was going to put in, who I was thinking about.
A different actor.
Yeah, a different actor.
You can't tell me who it is?
No.
Okay.
And he said, oh, Jesus fucking Christ. I can't let you do that. All right, I'll do it.
Had you asked him if you wanted to do it?
And that phone call?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no. So that he hadn't asked and he just like volunteered. So you weren't surprised?
No. At his death? No.
Yeah.
Was I upset? Yeah. But what I wasn't was destroyed. That's the word you use. No, I wasn't destroyed.
Oh, destroyed. So when The Sopranos was wrapping up, Brad Gray said, yeah, I think he was the head of Paramount at that point. He was like, I foresee David's going to make a ton of movies with me. He's going to be a movie guy. He's always wanted to be a movie guy. And you made a movie, and it got good reviews. It did not capture the imagination of the public the way The Sopranos had. What was that like after having The Sopranos and then going out and having something, whether the publicity people blew it, something that didn't actually...
Well, the comparison, me comparing it to my Sopranos experience had nothing to do with it. In other words, I never once said, God, The Sopranos was like, really good and big and made a big splash, and this thing just died. I never said that.
I didn't suggest you did, but what was it? I mean, was it difficult going from this kind of...
It still is.
Tell me about that. Why?
No, it's not. It wasn't difficult going from the heights of The Sopranos to the lows of a movie that nobody saw. That wasn't... The trip down was not the problem. The problem was that movie was stupidly and arrogantly treated by the studio that made it. It may have been a terrible movie. I'm not saying whether it was good or bad, but nobody got to see it. So they didn't publicize it at all. I mean, that movie, in September it is, was selected as the centerpiece of the New York Film Festival. Okay, there's opening night, closing night, and then there's the centerpiece.
Yeah.
That movie was picked as that. And then Paramount took it and put it on the shelf for 2 months. No further publicity. They spent money on other movies, the movie with Barbra Streisand and Seth Rogen.
Oh, the one about the road trip?
Yeah.
With the annoying mother, which
Yeah.
was considered one of the worst movies ever made, right?
That's where they put their money.
That's where they put their
For
money.
one thing, they didn't advertise us. You never saw us on television or anywhere.
Didn't you? I mean, I just feel like after having, you came in as a big heavy, as like a big figure in entertainment. Didn't they? Weren't they at least?
There was talk in some places that we were going to get an Academy Award. This is what I'm saying.
Isn't that respect though? Shouldn't they have had the respect to push this thing as considering what you've done for entertainment, and
Of
considering
course,
the
and
power?
don't forget, Brad was my friend. But here's the point: no one would have made that movie except a friend of mine, except Brad. That movie was what? Not a commercial movie?
Yeah.
I thought it was, but
Did it sour you on the process of filmmaking? I mean, you haven't made a film
no,
since.
no.
Are you making? Are you in the midst of developing or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I did write another big project, like 6 hours or something.
Was this the HBO? I saw something in 2009 about an HBO thing about the early Hollywood, and then
Yeah.
I just haven't. Is that still something that's going to happen?
No, they're not. They're no longer interested in doing it, but they were before Plepler left at that time. They were interested in doing it, but the money they came up with was couldn't really.
See,
do
I
it.
don't understand. I mean, maybe I'm being naive, but Ryan Murphy could. I don't know, shit in a cup, and I feel like somebody would produce it. I just feel you created The Sopranos. How come people aren't falling all over themselves to produce whatever? Why would HBO turn something down?
I don't have the answer for you. why they just wouldn't come up. They got stuck at a certain level financially, and they said they would do it if we would shoot it in, I forget, somewhere in Canada, Ottawa or something. I thought, what? I mean, we're here in Los Angeles, and I know the old Hollywood's being eaten up, but there's still stuff here. There's a palm tree or two. And you want us to go to Canada and build what? Build fucking Hollywood Boulevard?
So they would have done it, but not the way you needed it to be done.
Exactly. Right.
Okay. You said before that you weren't interested in actually continuing the Sopranos series after the finale, but this prequel ends when Tony is like 15 years old, and The Sopranos began when Tony was 35. So potentially you have 20 years of prequels that you could do. Do you have any interest in continuing the story?
Well, I'd have to be asked first. Warner Brothers would say, do you want to do this? Right?
Well, you can tell me, though. Is it something you'd be interested in?
I'd be very candid with you. I would be interested in it if Terry Winter and I could do it together. Otherwise, I'm not interested.
To write and direct together?
Write together. I wouldn't want to do it by myself. It's just too much work.
Joe Pants, who played Ralphie, had a story that he told once, which is after he beat the stripper to death, he said, he beats his girlfriend who's pregnant to death with his fists. And it's one of the most horrifying scenes ever put on. And he said, Joey Pants said, afterwards I got stopped on Fifth Avenue by little old ladies who were like, oh my God, you were so bad to that woman. And they're feeling my arms. They were flirting with me, turned on that I was the guy who beat up the hooker. It was sick. I think that you probably had to admit at a certain point, you had some meathead fans. You probably did not embrace a lot of your fan base, right?
Embrace them. No, we were... Here's okay, I've said this 100 times. I said my favorite thing about the show was when I heard that people would get together on Sunday night with pizza or pasta and red wine and watch it together and have a party.
I did that. And it's a very sort of significant thing in my 20s. I lost custody of the Sopranos night. I had a breakup. We went to a very good friend of mine. He lived in Park Slope. We'd go to his house. Everybody would make something different every week. One person would cook. And I had this girlfriend who I brought into that circle, and I broke up with her, and she just kept coming. And I couldn't, I lost custody of Sopranos night. And to this day, I still tell my friend, I can't believe you didn't kick her ass out of Sopranos. That was my Sopranos night.
Oh, that's incredible. But I mean, when I said that, I wasn't thinking about the people I went to Stanford with. I wasn't thinking about millionaires or so-called elitists, people who actually think. I was thinking about my relatives, people, anybody.
David Chase, thank you so much. Can you call my friend Sam and tell him what a shit he is for letting my ex-girlfriend take over Sopranos night, please?
I'll tell him, yeah.
Seriously? Isn't that kind of unforgivable?
We should give you some frozen baked ziti or something to make up for it.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.
So that's our show. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, subscribe, and tell all the members of your crew. And perhaps you'll even want to make an announcement at the next meeting of the Five Families. Organized criminals, I'm told, are always looking for new podcast recommendations. This episode was produced by myself, Andrew Goldman, and Rob Heath, who is well known by manicurists all over Brooklyn as Robbie Pine Nuts. Special thanks to Scott Feinstein and Annalie Paulo at 42 West, as well as Nicole Lambert at Chase Films. Thanks also to Haley Eber, Gwyneth Stewart, and Silver Fox editor Mayor Rashawn at Los Angeles Magazine. The Originals is, as always, a highly replaceable production.